many of those Ukrainians, they felt that in Poland there was not really a good enough environment or atmosphere to continue the struggle against the Soviet Union, as they felt that the Poles, they were hoping that they would be able to create good relations with their Soviet neighbor. They simply didn't want to fight another war anytime soon, as the country had been so devastated in the previous 6 years of war. And they felt that the Ukrainians that had been trying to fight against the Soviet Union, even after the Poles had signed the truce in November 1920, and during that second winter campaign of 1921, they felt that the Ukrainians could be somewhat of a liability for relations between Poland and the Soviet Union. So many of these commanders from the Ukrainian army, they left. Some settled in Prague, some settled in Paris, such as Petliura himself, the leader of the Ukrainian People's Republic. But there was a significant number of Ukrainians who decided to remain in Poland, especially in eastern Poland, where there were regions where there was a large Ukrainian population, and in many areas even a majority population, especially of course in those rural areas in the east. The Ukrainians felt simply that there they would at least be able to live among their own, to do some kind of community work, and also keep an eye on that border with the Soviet Union. And they were hopeful that sooner or later there would be a second attempt to liberate their lands. Marko Bezruczko, between 1921 and 1924, was a member of the Ukrainian People's Republic's highest military council that was in Poland. So they were still keeping tracks of military developments in the Soviet Union. They were trying to estimate how numerous a Ukrainian army could be created in Poland if there would be another war coming up. But after 1924, they started feeling that the likelihood of this happening was becoming slimmer and slimmer. And some of that more military aspect of Marko Bezruczko's life ended in 1924. However, he remained very active in Ukrainian circles. He was a respected name throughout the 1920s and the 1930s. He was also one of these unofficial leaders of the political faction of the moderate Ukrainians. You had a Ukrainian political party that was represented in Poland that was moderate and believed that they should be working within the political system of the Polish Second Republic. These were the ones that Marko Bezruczko supported. And then you had, especially in the later part of the 1920s and start of the 1930s, you had the more radical organization of Ukrainian nationalists that believed that they should wage some form of guerrilla warfare against the Polish state to make sure that the Ukrainian population is not lured or tempted into cooperating with the Polish state. Instead, they wanted as much animosity between the Poles and the Ukrainians as possible. Marko Bezruczko was against that, and naturally, because of that, also become an enemy of these Ukrainian nationalists. He was still alive when the Germans and the Soviets invaded in 1939. He didn't really play any role in the defense of Poland at that time. He was naturally well into his 60s. He was an older man at that time, and during the occupation, he made some contacts with the Ukrainians early on. As among the Ukrainians, they saw initially after the German attack, they saw some possibility that the Germans could help them to create a Ukrainian independent state, carving it out of the Soviet Union. Naturally, these aspirations, they grew after 1941 and Operation Barbarossa, when the German army invaded the Soviet Union on June 22nd. There was even more activity in Warsaw. Marko Bezruczko was involved in some of those talks, but in the end he did not play any important role in that process. And finally, in 1944, he passed away, dying a natural death, which for a man of his stature and those years was something quite uncommon. He was buried at the Orthodox cemetery in the district of Wola here in Warsaw. And this is where his grave has in recent years seen more and more commemoration ceremonies, more and more activity. Now, on the eve of the anniversary of the Battle of Warsaw and the Polish Armed Forces Day, which is celebrated in connection with that on August 15th. On the day before, on August 14th, the Polish President Andrzej Duda went out to the Orthodox cemetery in Wola to honor all the soldiers of the Ukrainian 6th Rifle Division that are buried there, but also General Marko Bezruczko.